16th of May, 1839. The unflinching African sun has continued to plague our expedition, making it impossible to dig until dusk. How Professor Herbert managed to find the location in these vast plains of nothingness remains a complete mystery to me. When I asked him about the tomb again, he told me about the legend of Tin Hinan, or the mother of us all. An interesting story in its own right, but I can't help but feel that there's something more to it. Later that evening, we uncovered a passage beneath the dunes leading to a sand-covered stone structure. The professor was confident it was the tomb that we sought, and ordered the others to clear the way, late into the cold, dark night. Tomorrow, I shall lead the men into the ancient structure, hoping to reach the burial chamber. No matter what the professor is keeping from me, the dig should yield something interesting to take back to London and the British Museum. 17th of May, 1839. My hands continue to tremble as I write, but I feel the need to document my tribulation, for I fear that my memory will fail me if I linger. Today, I took some men and ventured into the dark, ancient passage that we uncovered. Our torches burned faintly in the murky air as we slowly made our way underground. The men were superstitious and fearful. They argued loudly, and I felt their strange language getting to me. I mustered my strength, and I yelled at them to continue down the slopes and to the broken steps. The crudely carved passage confused me. It looked much older than the 4th century structure that we had been expecting. The twisting path emerged into a great antechamber. The walls were lined with statues unlike anything I'd ever seen. Despite their unearthly quality, I felt a strange familiarity towards them, and it still haunts me. At the end of the chamber, we had a great slab of stone, sealing off whatever laid ahead. I gave the order to raise it, and I pushed through the narrow space. The heavy stone suddenly dropped, sealing me inside. I was trapped. 17th of May, 1839, inside chamber. After pounding the unforgiving stone wall for what seemed like an eternity, I realized that my situation was hopeless. I was trapped. I fell to the ground, gasping for air, trying to focus. And that's when I saw it. A faint blue shimmer. My weakened body was heavy to carry, but I managed to push myself towards the enchanting light. It was waiting for me, enclosed in dark nothingness. I felt myself drawn to the mystic light. I reached out, closing it in my hands. The faint glow escaped my fingers and began to spark brightly and spirit me away, unlocking alien memories of spiraling towers, endless deserts, and impossible geometry. The next thing I remember is the grating sound of stone being lifted, and the voices of the Arabs pulling me to safety. And grasped firmly in my hands was the broken pieces of a peculiar relic. 22nd of June, 1839. It's been more than a month since my last entry. After the event inside the underground chamber in Algeria, Professor Herbert insisted that I return to England. He said that he didn't want to risk forfeiting the entire expedition, lest I took a turn for the worse. An excessive decision in retrospect, but I am glad that it turned out this way. I found my journal this morning in the haphazard collection of things that I brought home from Africa. Next to it lay the broken stone orb wrapped in a cloth. I tried to assemble it, but I couldn't. The pieces wouldn't fit together, as if they weren't from the same object. Could I have imagined it all? Was there ever a complete orb? "25th of June, 1839. I feel the need to continue this journal, even though it was intended just for my journey to Africa. This must be something very important. I just know it. I've taken it upon myself to piece the orb back together, but it's been more difficult than one might imagine. The pieces are behaving very strangely. They seem to change color, shape, and texture, but ever so slightly. Yesterday, I took careful measurements and noted any significant markings. Today, when I woke up, I confirmed my suspicions. They were changing. I was terrified, and I rushed off to see the finest geologist in London, Sir William Smith. I approached the subject with care, and we discussed how rocks change form over time. He also told me about the nature of glass, how it eventually collapses on itself, like ice slowly melting over the course of centuries. Smith eased my mind a bit, but I can't escape the feeling that these shards have otherworldly properties. 2nd of July, 1839. I received a letter today from the Algerian governor's office disclosing the fate of Professor Herbert's expedition. About a week after my departure, Abdullah, one of the men that was traveling with us, returned from the desert. He was badly wounded, as if maimed by a lion. The man rambled deliriously about the expedition and being attacked by something nightmarish. The French quickly dispatched a search party to look for the expedition, but after searching for days, they found the camp abandoned without any trace of Herbert or the missing men. Tomorrow, I retrieve the things that they recovered from Herbert's tent at the customs office. I don't know what to make of it, but I am worried for him. 3rd of July, 1839. Today I picked up Herbert's things at the customs office. I dug through the trove of documents he had carried and found a log detailing the expedition. The nature of this text ranged from quick notes to colourful accounts of transpired events. I skipped through the pages, trying to find out what might have happened. On May 17th, the day that I was trapped inside the orb chamber, Herbert dryly states, "Recovered Daniel after 1 hour of entrapment." This confused me greatly. I was suffocating within minutes. How could I have lasted an hour down there? I continued reading the peculiar text. Herbert states his facts without judgment or any form of passion, but suddenly I could read frustration into his text. He pushed his men to investigate the underground tomb, an effort which seems to have strained the minds of the men. Madness began to spread through the ranks, and Herbert had to take some extreme measures to continue. Disturbingly, he had to shoot one of the men to, quote, set an example. He finally visited the chamber himself, where he retrieved the orb and took it to the surface. This last part confuses me greatly. If he has the orb, then what are those pieces in my drawing room? 4th of July, 1839. It's done. The orb is reassembled. I was awakened by an exhausting nightmare. I was shaking and I woke up in a cold sweat. I retired to the drawing room with a freshly brewed cup of tea to calm my nerves. The relic pieces lay spread across the table just as I had left them. But somehow, I knew how it was supposed to be. It just came to me. I fetched the tar which I had prepared to fix the pieces together, and without fault and without pause, I joined them, producing the orb I remembered so clearly from my time in the chamber. The tar proved unnecessary. It was pushed out from the joining pieces as they merged together on their own with no adhesive whatsoever. The ancient stone relic now sits on my table in the middle of my drawing room. The immaculate surface and the perfect shape could have been moulded by a factory. This is all too strange. 5th of July, 1839. Today I went to the university to look for answers. I was able to sneak into Professor Herbert's office and pick up an address book, along with some relevant textbooks. Professor Taylor at the Faculty of History was very helpful, and I managed to approach the subject of the orbs. The most interesting aspect was the prevalent trace that they have left within our culture. The mythic orbs may in fact have inspired the globus cruciger, which so many royal regalia hold to this day. In ancient times, the orbs were held by priests as a symbol of the sun and its power. As I was leaving, I overheard a disturbing conversation. Sir William Smith, the geologist, was killed last night. Less than a fortnight had passed since I last seen him and asked for his expertise. I know it's silly, but I can't help but feel that I'm somehow responsible for this. 14th of July, 1839. I have read every book I can find on this subject. While rich in legend and hearsay, my knowledge is lacking for the insight I crave. I have sent letters to almost everyone in Herbert's address book and received answers of varying importance. Today, I got one which differed greatly from all the others, from a baron in Prussia. He said nothing about the quaint stories of the priests in underground temples. He didn't even mention them. He simply wrote one sentence. I know. I can protect you. Come to Brennenburg Castle. Signed, Alexander. What am I to make of this? Protect me from what? Is someone after me? I looked up Brennenburg and traced it to the Prussian woods near the Baltic Sea. While being the least informative letter I've ever received by far, it causes me greatest distress and interest. As I write my thoughts, they are drawn to my nightmares, in which a most disturbing sound calls to me. A sound defying description, a voice from the void. The last few weeks have been awful, with so many sleepless nights, dreading a repeat of those horrid dreams. Tomorrow I'm visiting my physician, Dr. Tate, in the hope that he can provide me with sedatives so I can sleep properly. 17th of July, 1839. How has this escaped me? They're all dead. Limbs scattered, heads split down the middle, their skin flayed as if boiled. I feel like I'm falling into myself. What's happening? Professor Herbert, Sir William Smith, Professor Taylor, and now Dr. Tate. Is it following me? How can it not be? It's the damn thing I bought from Africa. Something is after me. I have no choice but to trust this baron. He had better know what he claims. If he is wrong, I suspect he'll regret it as well. 2nd of August, 1839. I have arrived at the village of Altstadt. It's a haven in the midst of a vast forest, and it's the last stop before my final destination, the castle of Brennenburg. It's late in the evening, and the outrider, who has been with the coach since Bremen, advised me to wait until the morning before I venture further. I've arranged for a bed at Der Moor, the village's only inn, and I am now waiting for the sun to rise. I try to sleep, but as I close my eyes, I see the men who fell victim in London. My fear and my shame forces me to witness the same scenes over and over and over again. They are all dead because of me. 3rd of August, 1839. I feel like I have fled the world and all of its worries. Brennenburg is a majestic creation, perched upon a forest-clad hill with towers reaching well above the highest pine trees. Following the winding road leading to the gates gives the impression of discovering something forgotten, as if journeying with Marco Polo to the hidden Xanadu. Alexander, the Baron, is a peculiar but gracious man. He seems well versed in worldly matters and is not at all the eccentric that I assumed he was. My room is exquisite, and I am confident that no hotel for miles could even hope to match it. As the sun sets on Brennenburg, however, its fairy tale-like varnish turns into an eerie gloom. Alexander's strange servants are never far away. They are a quiet lot, and their behavior could best be described as skulking. Alexander seems pleased by my presence. As he puts it, it seems like I got here just in time, and I share his enthusiasm. 4th of August, 1839. The nightmares woke me up again in the early morning, and for a brief moment I forgot where I was. Shortly after, there was a knock at my door. Alexander had heard my screams and asked me to join him in the parlour. As we drank our morning tea, Alexander began to tell me what he knew. It seems like the orb I found casts a long and dark shadow. It's not only a powerful item, but a dangerous one. Simply by touching it, you invoke the powers within, and if you are too weak to control it, it will devour you. The shadow is a sluggish thing, lagging behind the wielder, killing anyone or anything in its path to reclaim the orb. I said I didn't care for its powers and that I should just throw it away. Alexander strongly advised against this, as I would still be a part of the path to the orb and eventually suffer a terrible and painful death. Having the orb, I would at least have a chance to fight back against the creature when the time came. I asked Alexander what he meant when he said that he could protect me, and he answered that things can be done, but at a price. 7th of August, 1839. There is no denying that Alexander puts a lot of faith into what I can best describe as magic. I'm not surprised. Even while travelling across Europe, I assumed I would have to embrace the supernatural to save my mind, as well as my life. As a novice, I do everything in my power to stay focused and not dwell too much on my own doubts. Alexander woke me up early and told me that we had to get started on our work. He was obviously very excited to get going, and we headed downstairs to the old dungeons where he preferred to attempt his rituals. It turns out that Alexander is a true Renaissance man, paralleled only by Da Vinci himself, I am sure. He showed me several rooms fitted for very specific research fields, such as anatomy studies, alchemy, and botany. The crown of Brennenburg is undoubtedly the inner sanctum, a most hallowed ground, built far below the very bricks of Brennenburg, where we shall attempt to permanently banish the orb's shadow and save my life. 8th of August, 1839. Ever since this crucible of mine began, ever since I journeyed to Algeria, I could never be certain that I was on the right path. That changed today. Using my orb, Alexander managed to channel its powers onto us. The inner sanctum flared with a blue fiery light, and I could feel the same things I felt in the dark chamber back in Algeria. It was like standing in a mad whirlpool of impressions. It was wondrous but terrifying, but Alexander kept calm and wielded the strange tools of science in order to tame the storm. Suddenly, the blue light was stained by stains of red, and the walls began to burst with pulsating tissue resonating with the scene. Alexander quickly covered the orb in some cloth, and the unspeakable thing vanished. Apparently, the orb's shadow is closer than Alexander thought. He says that I should prepare for a warding ritual tomorrow. I'm not sure what he expects, but I have a bad feeling about this. 9th of August, 1839. It is still early and Alexander is busy preparing for the ritual later today. Seeing him this worked up makes me question, why? What does he have to gain from all of this? From helping save a complete stranger? I realize he is curious about it all, but surely there must be more to it. Is he so foolish he will attempt to tame the power of the orb? Does he really have that much hubris? I must admit that yesterday when Alexander flooded the inner sanctum with that blue light, I realized that we had just grazed the orb's true potential and power. This might turn out to be more than just escaping a creeping shadow. It might be the beginning of something truly extraordinary. 9th of August, 1839. I can't stop sweating and shaking. The warding ritual was not something of a sane mind. I didn't even realize that the dungeon was still in use. Alexander had his servants bring in one of the prisoners, a murderer, Alexander told me. Alexander made all of the arrangements, but he said that I had to be the one to perform the ritual in order for it to have the right effect. The shadow could be led astray with the blood of another. Killing this man would provide us precious time. This man is a murderer. He's had his chance. And I am a victim of circumstance. What else could I do? Alexander said it had to be done. He is saving my life. I do not have the luxury of arguing. 12th of August, 1839. The banishment ritual is taking longer than expected, and we have to do what is needed. I spend my time helping out with the prisoners. Being around these degenerates makes me sick. None of them even try to face their punishment with any kind of dignity. They taunt me with their lies of innocence and their cowardly pleas for mercy. What can make a man fall so far from grace of a civilized existence? They are all wicked men, and I remind myself of it constantly. Still, I am thankful to God for sending these monsters our way, as they will serve as the instruments of my salvation. I try to study the different tools of the torture chamber and learn how to use them effectively. My last torture session earlier this morning was messy, and the effect suffered from my inexperience. But when the next warding ritual is to be performed, I will be ready. 15th of August, 1839. The blood wards are failing. The shadow beckons and its cry disarms my actions. Hurry. There's no time to spare. I have to kill another. Alexander produces a knife for me. He wants me to cut the flesh. Do it. Save yourself. He's a murderer, Daniel. He is an evil, cold-blooded killer. Hurry! Alexander, you must let me be. I have to concentrate. Paint the man, cut the lines, cut the flesh, watch the blood spill. Let it come. Please, I didn't do anything. Paint the man, cut the lines. Paint the man, cut the lines. Please, the man cries. Hush, hush. Now you can sleep. I did well. One life for another. You hear me, guardian of the orb? I did all of this for you. Now, once more, withdraw your shadow from my domain. Alexander, there isn't much time. I can feel it. We must act swiftly. I will do whatever it takes. 18th of August, 1839. Tonight, we unlock the power of the orb and ultimately banish the shadow that is hunting me. I feel it closing in on me, and I fear for my life, now more than ever. Just outside of Asphalt lies a small settlement where Zimmerman, a dairy farmer, lives with his wife and 3 children. I took the coach and went there. Our visit was unexpected, and Alexander was able to strike Herr Zimmerman down without alerting the others. As he went to take care of the farmhands, I began to look for the children. We should have more than enough prisoners to finish the ritual now. 18th of August, 1839. I cannot believe what I've become. One of the girls escaped, and I chased after her all the way upstairs. I hunted her down, and then I... What is a life worth? How many lives can I take before I surrender my own? Yes, I would kill a murderer to save an innocent. But to kill an innocent to save myself, a cold-blooded murderer. My God, what have I done? It's not fair! I'm not to blame! I've been manipulated by that demon. He played my guilty conscience and duped me into facing the shadow alone. That vile conspiracy man. He expects me to meet my death as he steals power beyond imagination. Alexander! I will kill you for what you've done! If only the shadow had caught me in London or Algeria, I wouldn't have to suffer this humiliation! I could have faced the shadow as an innocent! But you made me a murderer! A monster! And now I merely await my death. I'm too weak to press on. I can hardly stand as my knees fail me. I cannot see as my eyes are dressed in tears. I am as broken as the men that I have tortured. If only I could wipe away my fear, as we did with them. 19th of August, 1839. I wish I could ask how much you remember. I don't know if there'll be anything left after I consume this drink. Don't be afraid, Daniel. I can't tell you why, but know this. I choose to forget. Try to find comfort and strength in that fact. There is a greater purpose. You are my final effort to put all of this right. God willing, the name Alexander of Brennenburg still invokes bitter anger in you. If not, this will sound horrible. Go to the inner sanctum, find Alexander, and kill him. His body is old and weak, yours young and strong. He will be no match for you. One last thing. A shadow is following you. It's a living, breathing nightmare, breaking down reality. I have tried everything there is, and there is no way to fight back. You need to escape it for as long as you can. Redeem us both, Daniel. Descend into the darkness where Alexander awaits, and murder him. Your former self, Daniel.